One of the key findings from the Royal Commission into Aged Care, Quality and Safety was the need for an urgent review into food and nutrition. One ingredient, the lupin, used in cooking for centuries, could be key to combating malnutrition in seniors in care, as Landline's Helena Bachkowski reports.
This is a lupin plant, part of the legume family. Its seeds are used in Australia as cattle feed and are good for fattening. The Augustus filius lupin variety feeds cattle, but there's also the albus, or sweet white lupin variety, which offers good eating for everyone. Farmer Gary Drew grows both types. He and his sister Chris Johnston are advocating for us, humans, to consider adding lupins to our diet.
They're far more nutritious than any other grain and any other legume. So their protein level is higher, their fibre is higher, carbs are lower, and they have all the amino acids. Just, for example, they're 3 times more protein than quinoa.
Gary farms canola, wheat, lupins and sheep outside Albury in New South Wales. He originally included the lupin crop to feed his livestock.
And this is the big feeding truck.
This is the feed truck, yes. This is where we also use lupins for the stock feed rather than human consumption. So with the silage, we put some lupins on the floor and we mix it with it. So depending on whether the stock are in need of protein or energy will depend on how much lupins we put in it, or whether we would put, a wheat or something like that where they need energy.
Using lupins in his stock feeds since the 1980s, it wasn't until around 2014 Gary had his lupin lightbulb moment.
Well, the human consumption idea didn't come until we were actually steaming and rolling some lupins in one of the dry periods. There's a local feedlot here that had good results from steaming and rolling the lupins in the feedlot, and he felt that he could feed a smaller percentage of it and get greater weight gains. And I said to him, well, why aren't we doing that with our stock here? We're feeding them under drought conditions. So I got some angustifolius, the little round ones, done, and we mixed them in, and we ran out of those at the time, and we still had some of these. So I asked him, can you do it to these ones? The answer is, we don't know, let's find out. So he steamed and rolled these, and I brought home a truckload ready to feed to the stock, and I rolled the tarp back and the sun was shining on them and they smelt like Uncle Toby's. And I'm going, why aren't we eating these things?
Did you do a little bit of
I did. And I still remember yelling out to Butch, who's working with us, come and have a taste of this. Do you reckon we can eat this? And he didn't say no, not that he's that fussy.
Gary and Chris use the seeds, which can also sometimes be called pulses, of the particular albus sweet white lupin plant to make lupin flakes. So how do they taste?
Chris, this smells incredible. What is going on here?
It's the kernel, so the seed's been dehulled and steamed and rolled and then put through the toaster, and it just smells like beautiful cereal, doesn't it?
It looks like cornflakes too.
But it's got nutritional value.
That even better. You're not feeding this to livestock though?
No. This goes into, we sell this to go into cereals, into granola, anything. We have customers who put it in spaghetti bolognese because they've got a diabetic daughter, just to add some protein, because it's 43% protein.
It's amazing.
So,
and the whole machine, this is a big secret, right? Why is that?
oh, we're the only people in the world that do this.
Can you eat them straight out of here?
Absolutely.
Could I try one?
Yeah, please do.
Well, that looks like a good one. Oh, they are nutty. Well, that's really good.
It's really good.
In addition to the flakes, the small company, run with family volunteers, makes a crumb, semolina, kibble and flour.
In Australia, lupin, as you've alluded to, has been used for livestock, but in Europe, that Mediterranean diet's been marketed for human consumption. Why do you think the Australians have been so reluctant?
Well, that's a good question, because 80% of the lupins grown in the world are grown in Australia. And certainly the ones for human consumption have been the minority that are being grown, but it's been interesting that nobody's tried to get them into the human consumption area, and nearly everybody in the district has had a go at growing them at some stage or other.
Thanks, Mel.
But the price fluctuations, you know, from $350 a tonne up to $1,000 a tonne, there are times when everybody wants to have a go at it, but there are also times where they can see a better gross margin in other crops.
The nutritional value of lupins can't be overstated. A Bonn University academic studied the effects of introducing lupins to the diet of aged care residents. And the results have been remarkable.
We'll have some afternoon tea. That's it. Yes, and a cake. And a cake. Nice.
Dr. Cherie Hugo is a dietitian and clinical nutritionist. For the past 11 years, she's worked in the aged care sector.
1 in 2 residents are malnourished across Australia in residential aged care. And so decided that I guess it's not something that dietitians are going to solve. It needed something that really did take on, you know, the complexity of the space.
Dr. Hugo works with aged care CEOs, researchers, nursing staff and catering managers to provide food that is nutritious, and that's where lupins came in.
So I got into lupin flour as part of my PhD research. It is one of the protein fortification methods that we use in our program. So lupin is an Australian grown legume that's exceptionally high in protein, which is why we are drawn to it. It's also very high in soluble fibre. It's got all of the essential amino acids. It's great for bowels, which is important within aged care. It's great for wound care. And it really kind of ticks the box and integrates into a lot of the foods that we know are well eaten in the aged care space. We've, over the first 3 months of our research, demonstrated a reduction of 34% in malnutrition across those residents that were involved.
Is that a huge drop? That seems like a big number.
It's a fantastic drop. It's something that we're also seeing now post-research across aged care organisations. For instance, this organisation, which has demonstrating an improvement in nutrition 5 times more than what we'd expect and see in public publications.
Because we'll just top and tail.
Chef Ben Hazelwood has come on board to make the food nutritious, but maybe even more importantly, delicious.
Morning tea cakes and soups, so easy to modify, and then...
Part of his role is also teaching university students about the importance of both these attributes.
Lupin does work differently to normal flours when you get to those larger scales. So at a smaller scale, if you're only using 20 to 30%, it doesn't have very much of an impact on the actual overall product. But once you get into those higher percents, it does absorb moisture in a different way because it is so high fibre. So it's that two-sided coin. You are getting all these excellent things, but it does affect the way that things might rise. But that's only if you get to those high percents, which is also where I want to be trying to get to.
On Brisbane's Bayside, the Adventist Retirement Village has been working with Cherie Hugo's aged care nutritional consulting business.
Coffee and 2 with tea, and I'm not...
Chief Executive Eric Anderson says being involved in the research for the past 5 years has been fantastic.
The benefit to our residents is obviously the paramount thing for us, and to see the significant improvement for them as a result of that program has been inspiring, to say the least.
Chef Ben's lupin's recipes account for its specific taste.
Lupin has a very, very mild, nutty sort of flavour, and I find that it actually complements a lot of different ingredients, which is why I like to make things like carrot cakes, coffee cakes, mud cakes, because it has a very similar bitter note and adds this nutty sort of flavour that hits about the same point as things like nuts, or that chocolate sort of flavour has that same taste, and it in fact enhances those sort of flavours.
The nutty flavour does bring up one issue when using the pulse in cooking.
Are there dietary issues with lupin?
So the main dietary issue to consider with lupin is its connection with peanut allergies. So in aged care, peanut allergies affects a very small proportion of residents, and for a small proportion of those residents, they may be sensitised to lupin. So it's important that homes are are taking into account allergies, as you would with any allergy and dietary strategies.
But this drawback doesn't worry Eric Anderson.
We always look at what their current allergies are, and there's a close relationship between the nut allergies and lupin flour. So we obviously look at anybody who's got that sort of nut allergy, we look at that more than once just to make sure there's not going to be an issue.
And the biggest improvement comes from the protein intake.
Reduction in the number of supplements that we have to use, and also a much better outcome for our residents in terms of their muscle mass, etc., in terms of that extra protein actually having benefits for their ability to maintain muscle mass, or in some cases improve it.
Back on the farm, Gary Drew's crop is about to start budding. He says the inclusion of the legume helps not only feed his livestock, create a food source for human consumption, but it's good for soil health. And with good soil health, Gary is using less fertiliser on his other crops.
What we're looking at here is the nitrogen nodules on the plants themselves. So when we grow a legume, we're looking for nitrogen to be put back into the soil. It also utilises that nitrogen when it's growing the seeds.
And having these nodules and these nitrogen nodules on here, what is that telling you?
Well, it's telling us that firstly the microbes in the soil are doing what they're supposed to do. We put an inoculant on to encourage them to form the nitrogen nodules, and not always do you get that response. So with the dry start we had, I was a bit worried, but that's a really good plant, that one there. And these little lateral roots like this will have little ones on them that would have finished up in the soil anyway.
This human wonder food, with just one allergy setback, seems too good to be true. So why isn't it more widely available?
So you're saying there's a lot of growers. You're saying that no one else really is doing what you're doing as far as human consumption.
In the Albus lupins in the eastern states.
Right.
Western Australia are working with the angustifolius.
So do you have a market corner? Do you think that more people should be looking at doing what you're doing?
We'd like to see it become more mainstream, used more mainstream. I've tasted both. I've steamed and rolled both of them, and it's interesting that the breeding program in Western Australia is looking for a better tasting lupin. You can make your own assumptions.
Well, you made it. Oh, yeah, it should be all right.
Gary Drew says they have the taste right, but still they haven't managed to crack the market at home.
The problem is to get the human consumption market in Australia to have a desire to utilise that form of protein.
How do you do that?
It's a very good question.
Education.
Education, I think. The academics have done research and they've proven that they've got a response when they put it in the aged care area. The research on the nutritional value of lupins and other pulses versus cereals, all that work's been done. I mean, it's been done since the 1980s. Everybody knows how good they are, but yes, we need to get them into the general consumption in Australia.
Would you like to have a mouthful?
As they say, the proof is in the pudding. So how does this pudding taste?
It's very nice. It's very moist.
The residents at the retirement village seem happy enough with their lupin flour cakes and slices.
Just be happy when you smile.